Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, in the herbaceous border, as you can see, the comfrey is already starting to grow, and we've got lemon balm, mint and hollyhocks coming up as well. What I want to do before they grow any further, what I want to do is put a mulch over this, and what that's going to do is prevent any annual weeds growing through, and it'll allow me to sort of maintain the border a bit easier. Really, what I don't want to do is disturb the ground, because obviously all of these herbaceous plants have got the roots going all over the place, and what I don't want to be doing is forking it over. So if I can prevent the weeds from growing in the first place, that's going to be the best way forward. And all I'm going to do is put on this stuff, and all this is just shredded buddleia, which is going to rot down pretty quickly. And all I've done is I've shredded that up with the shredder, and I'm just going to put about a 2-inch layer of that over the top of the ground here, as long as Dorothy gets out of the way. And what that'll do is it'll suppress any weeds that go down. With things like mint and balm and stuff like that, they don't like the ground to be too wet, so what you don't want to be doing is putting anything on there that's too heavy, which is going to hold the moisture in the ground. You want the border to stay reasonably dry, which is why I've got it up this end of the allotment, and also it's slightly raised from ground level, so that prevents the ground becoming too wet really, because those are the conditions that most herbs like. They like it to be reasonably dry and not too fertile ground, but obviously what they do need is a bit of a boost every so often. So I'm going to put some of this mulch over the top of this border here, and obviously likewise over here around the sage, the oregano, and also there's some mint in there as well, and of course the rosemary. So I'm just going to just sort of put about 2 inches round these borders, just to stop any of the annual weeds coming through. Okay, so that's the border there with a mulch on of the chippings, as I say. Also done this side as well, so that will hold the weeds back, and hopefully I won't need to sort of disturb the ground too much, which is obviously what needs to be avoided. Right, so the next thing really this time of year is the paths. Now, as soon as you start seeing weeds growing, either on your patch or in your path or whatever, this is a real sign that the weather's starting to get to the point where you can start to plant things out. Obviously if the weeds start to grow, obviously other things will grow as well. But the one thing with you find with grass in the path, I've already started here, but it's not long before, I don't know if you can see, but it's not long before the grass actually starts to run to seed. So as soon as you start to see the grass coming up, and the best thing to do is wait for it to have rained, because then you find that the whole grass comes out in one go. What I suggest you do is get all of this out of your path if you have got paving like I've got, because if you leave it another couple of weeks, as you're walking over it, the seeds will be coming off this grass, and before you know it, you've got grass growing everywhere. So with weed or anything like this, if it's in your drive or your path up your allotment or anything, if you can get the grass out when it's at this stage, as I say, if you wait till it's rained, as you see, what happens is you can pull the whole plant out, so the roots come out as well. If you do when it's dry, what you tend to find is the plants will break off and you can't get the whole plant out. But if you wait till it's rained, where the ground's wet, what you'll find is the whole plant will actually come out from between the slabs. Now, I know this isn't the easiest and nicest job to do, but it's well worth doing, because it means you don't need to use weed killer and stuff like that, which I always avoid. But what it means is you can keep your path clear reasonably easily, and the earlier you do it, the less work it'll be for you in the long run, because if you can get these plants out before they run to seed, and as I say, they will run to seed pretty quickly. You can see on these grasses, you can see seed
already forming on them, so it's only going to be a matter of a couple of weeks before these seeds are ready to basically set themselves, and then that'll go between the path, and then before you know it, you've got grass everywhere. So what I suggest is you pull it all out as soon as you can, and then that'll hopefully keep your paths a lot clearer than it would have done normally.
Okay, so it's time to prick out the kale. Now, in exactly the same way as we did the calabrese, as you can see they're now growing on quite nicely. As you can see, they're sort of about 4 inches, 5 inches high now, and they're forming into really nice little plants. So all we need to do, as soon as they get to kind of this big, and really it's when they're big enough to grab hold of, we pot them up into sort of 4-inch pots. I always use square ones. Reason being, apart from the fact that they stack together really easily, with brassicas, the roots aren't that good, to be honest with you. And what brassicas typically, any problems that brassicas have typically, apart from insects, are typically with the roots. And what you find is the roots can get sort of clumped together. And when you consider the size of the plant, I mean, these plants are going to grow. I don't know, sort of 3-4 foot high, and the roots are only going to be like a ball this big. And when you consider the size of the root compared to the size of the plant, you know, it's quite out of proportion really. So what you need to do with brassicas, I say, is always look after the roots, because that's the part that's effectively the weakest part of the plant, if you like. So if you can keep the roots all right and keep a healthy plant, they're much less likely to be attacked by insects and other sort of pests and stuff like that. So all we're going to do is get a lollipop stick to get the first one out, and all I do is pick a nice big one, which is probably in the middle there. All I want to do is just go up the side of it and pull it out. Now, when you're pricking out plants, always remember that the leaves can grow back, the roots can grow back, but if you damage the stem, the plants will never recover from that. So never pull a plant out by its actual stalk if you can help it. The reason being is, you know, if you damage the stalk, it's never going to recover from that. So what you need to do is go underneath the plant like that, and then just lift the ground up like that, and then grab it by the root ball itself like that. So I'm not touching the stalk in any way. I've got the root ball. Make a hole in. Obviously I've also already got some compost in here. Bob that in, and then, oh, that's not going in quite well. Right, obviously make sure it's upright like that, and then obviously don't touch the stalk unless you can really help it. With brassicas, you can plant them slightly deeper than they were originally, but you don't want to go too much deeper than they were. With tomatoes, that's a method that you can use. You know, you can plant a tomato 6-8 inches deeper than it was originally, because you can, with the tomato, the roots will start coming from the side of the plant. But with brassicas, all you want to do is make sure that it anchors well. So if it is slightly deeper, as in a centimetre or so, don't worry about that, but you don't want to go much deeper than that. So as I say, I'm not touching the stems. All I'm doing is going under, as you can see with me lollipop stick, pulling it out, holding it by the roots, and then just bobbing it in like that. Okay, so that's all of the kale in now. So as you can see, there's 30 plants there, which is more than enough. There's still a few little bits and bobs in here that I'll just put on one side for now. But basically those are the ones that I'll have moving forward. All I'm going to do now is basically just give them a good watering, and then I'll set them on one side, and I'll show you what they look like in a few weeks' time. Okay, so it's time to pot up the onions. As you can see, the little plantlets are quite big, and they've got sort of reasonably good roots forming on there. Now what I want to do before they get too big in this tray here, what I want to do is actually pot them up into sort of larger pots. Now something like this is probably about right. So what I'm going to do is put some compost in here, and what I want to do is try and get one healthy onion out of in each one of these cells. So I don't want the compost to be overly packed in there too much. Right, so Now I've got the compost there, what I'm going to do is, if I start at this end, I'm going to make a hole in the middle and then take one of the onion seedlings like that, and I'm just going to bob, trying to get the roots in, just bob that in like that. Now I know the roots are in all the way into the bottom, I'm just going to push that in slightly like that. Now I will put a little bit more compost on in a moment, so I'm just making a hole in the middle, taking out one of the onions like that. Now I don't know if you can see, what I'm going to do is just, it is a little bit fiddly, but I'm just pushing the roots into the bottom of the hole so that the roots go down as opposed to sideways, and just push that in like that. So as I say, it is slightly fiddly. What I could have done was actually sew them straight into one of these boxes, put a couple of seeds in each one, and obviously take out the stronger ones there. There's not so much compost in that one, so I'm just going to bob a little bit more in like that. I say it is slightly fiddly to do this, so I'm just getting, I've basically got the seed tray here. I'm just going under exactly like I've done with the brassicas, try not to damage any of the roots, and then make a hole in the middle of the cell and just tease the roots so the roots are going downwards. There you go, just squeeze that. I'll put a bit more compost again in there in a second, and I'm just going to go through getting each of these out. Obviously what I'm doing is going underneath to loosen the compost with a lollipop stick like that, and then make sure that the roots are facing down. So what you don't want to do is damage the roots if you can help it, like that. As I say, as soon as you've done that, what you can do is just put a little bit more compost in. Now when you water these in a few minutes time, it's all going to settle down anyway, so you don't need to be overly fussy. So I'll just show you again. Oh, there's a good one there. I guess the good sort of reason behind doing this is, what you can do is you can pick out the best, you know, the best onions out of here, you know, and the smaller ones you can sort of leave them if you like. You don't need to use everyone. So as I say, it is slightly fiddly, but it's well worth doing. Obviously be very careful. You know what you don't want to do is, if you can keep some compost on there, that's better. But you want to make sure that the roots go down to the bottom of the pot, and try your damnedest not to damage any of the roots as they go in, like that. As I say, with a lollipop stick it does make it a lot easier. Right, so I'll just finish off doing the rest of these, and I'll show you what they look like when I've finished. Okay, so somewhere I've got a large envelope with some sunflower seeds in. I can't find it anywhere. I've looked, I can't find it. So I've got my backup plan, which is obviously this smaller sunflower. Now what I normally do is I normally save the seeds off the biggest flower I've got. This is one that just happened to be in the greenhouse that I kept as a backup plan, but I can't find the seeds off the biggest flower. It shouldn't really make too much difference. What I'm going to do is use the seeds off this one. So all I do is fill these pots. As you see, I've got a tray here of seeds, and what I do is I put 2 seeds into each one. Now if you're saving your own seed, what you want to do is just squeeze the seed, right? If it's nice and solid on the inside, you know you've got a good seed. And what you want to do is plant it point downwards like that into the soil, and try and get them about 1 inch apart. And what you're going to do is, hopefully both of them will grow, and then what you can do is just pull out the weaker of the 2 plants. Now if you got seeds that you've bought from a shop, then obviously just put 1 seed in each, because the germination's pretty good. But if you're like me and you've got an abundance of seed, like I've got here, you know, just squeeze each seed, make sure that they don't crush in your hand, so they are definitely pollinated. You know, just give them a quick squeeze, and then you know that they're good seed, and then put 2 about 1 inch apart in a pot. And as I say, in the space of a couple of 3 weeks, these will soon germinate. And then what you can do is, you know, whichever one's the stronger of the two plants, you know, you can leave it till they're about kind of, I don't know, 6 inches high or so. And then if you leave it a couple of weeks, you know, you won't disturb the roots too much. What I would suggest you do is, the weaker of the two, cut it off rather than pulling it out, because what you can do is damage the root on the other one whilst you do that. So if you just get a pair of scissors or secateurs, just cut it off just under the ground, and then that one will die off, leaving the stronger of the two plants. So you want to get them reasonably in the middle, obviously, because the plant that you end up with, you want it to be pretty much in the middle of the pot. I'm just squeezing each of these as I put it in, and I'm growing 30, so I'm going to basically need 60 seeds, I guess. Right, as soon as the plants get to about a foot high, what I suggest you do is, there's a seed which isn't any good. I don't know if you can see. I've just squeezed that, and it's kind of, there's nothing on the inside. It's just like a shell. That's what you're looking for. Obviously, don't plant that because it won't grow. Right. Wait till they're about a foot high, and then you want to plant them out into the ground. What you don't want to do is leave them too much longer than that. And you can plant these out probably middle of May. It's not going to take long for these to grow. You know, they'll soon grow, and as soon as they get to about a foot high, they really do shoot, and that's when you need them in the ground, establishing the roots and everything else, because the better roots they've got, the better plant will grow. And what I suggest you do is, when you plant these into the ground, what I suggest you do is plant them about 6 inches or so deeper than they were in the pot. And what that does is it helps the plant to anchor itself a bit better. You will need to grow it up against a wall or a pole or something like that. They will need support up to about 2 meters at least. Obviously, if you got the dwarf sunflowers, you know, they don't typically need any support at all. But you know, before you plant your seed, as I say, make sure the seed's good. I'm just squeezing. I don't know if you've seen, I've rejected quite a few seeds just. Strap them in, you know, sort of tie them at about a metre off the ground, if not before. And then also you want to do it as high up as you possibly can do. When the flower head forms, they do get quite top heavy. And what you can find is, you know, the plant can snap off in high wind. So, you know, after you've grown it, it'd be a shame for it to break. But tie the plant off as high as you can, as close to the flower head as you can, because that's where the weight is. And then, you know, you've got the least chance of it, you know, sort of snapping off. So all you need to do now is just give these a quick shake like that. Then that'll shake the compost down into the holes. You want it to pull a little bit. As I say, these are 4-inch pots, the standard ones that I use. You get them from most allotment societies. They're about, I think I pay about 3p a pot, to be honest with you. They're not very expensive. I use these over and over again, these pots. I've had these, some of these pots for probably about 20 years, to be honest with you. And if you look after them, they do, you know, you do get the occasional one that splits like that. But if you look after them, they'll last you for years. Right, so what I need to do now is put a label on there, give them a water, and then they'll be up, as I say, in a few weeks' time. But if you do plant them, when you plant them outside, you do need to put them up against something that will give them a reasonable amount of support, either a frame or a cane, you know, a strong bamboo cane or something like that, just to hold them, because they will get top heavy. And that's sunflowers for now. Okay, the next plant up is asparagus. Now, with asparagus, even if you've got quite established plants, what you want to do is keep like a succession of plants going, as I've explained in the past. And all you need to do is collect the little seed heads. As you can see here, these are some that I collected last year, and these are the berries. Now, if you take one of the berries, in each of the berries there's going to be about 3 seeds. So all you need to do is dry it, crush it in your hand like that. As you can see, actually there's more than that. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seeds there, out of one berry. So those are the seeds, those are the bits you want to plant. Right, so I'm just going to put them in there. So the easiest way to do this is again using these modules. You can use slightly larger modules if you like, but these are more than big enough. And what you want to do is you want to grow asparagus in kind of a succession like this, because if any of the plants do die off in the ground, you've then always got some sort of more plants to bob in there. You know, if any of the plants do actually fail. So, as I say, all you need to do is put some compost in. Compost needs to be reasonably firm. It doesn't got to be overly firm. But you don't want it to be loose anyway. Now these are going to probably stay in here for most of this year, believe it or not. And then next year I'll pot them up into pots that big. And then the year after that I'll pot them up into pots about sort of that big, and then they'll be ready to go into the ground. Or you could actually plant them in the ground at that point. Now I've got plants that I grew last year and the year before, so you know I've got plants of various stages in the garden. So I'm just pushing the compost down slightly in there. Right, okay, so we're ready to start. Okay, so what we need to do now is to make sure that the seed actually stays in the middle, is just press your finger slightly into the top of the module, like that. So you've got like an indentation, exactly like you've done other things really. Then the seed will tend to fall into the middle, like that. Now you don't want to plant the seeds that deep, they only need to be quite close to the top. So obviously get the seeds out of the berries. All you need to do with that is just get the berries like that and just rub them in your hand. So you pick the berries when they're nice and red, and then over the winter just leave them in your greenhouse in a pot, keep them dry, and then what you'll find is they'll soon dry out. Right, obviously there's a reasonable amount of chaff in there, but these are the seeds, these little black. And what you want to do is put one or two, I'd probably suggest two, in each one of these cells. There's not really much point you put it in a bigger pot than this, to be honest with you, because they're not going to get that big this year. Now with asparagus, they don't like the roots to be too wet, so you don't want to overwater these. Keep them moist, but you don't want to overwater them. What you can do is put a little bit of sand with the compost. I never bother, but you can improve the drainage a little bit, stop them getting waterlogged. Okay, that's the first lot. And I typically just leave them in the berries like this, and then as you're doing this you just got to sort of rub the berries together like that in your hand. Now if the seeds look, oh here we go, if the seeds look, can you see there's like fungus on those? The seeds need to be black. If the seeds aren't black, see that seed, let me just show you, that seed there is nice and black, that's fine. These seeds here, can you see there's like fungus growing on them? Discard them, they're going to be no good to you. Right, these seeds also got a bit of fungus on. Right, so let's get some more black seeds. So I've already got some that are taken out. So as soon as you've got all of these in, you want to put one or two seeds in each one of these. Right, okay, I think we're nearly there. Just need one more seed. Right, so as soon as you've done that, you don't really need to grow any more than this. This will finally be quite a lot of asparagus. So you know, I wouldn't suggest you grow any more than this. All you need to do then is just sprinkle a little bit of compost over the top like that. So they end up being probably 1/8 of an inch deep, or 3-4 millimeters deep. Obviously as soon as you water this will come down. Give them a good watering, and then just keep them moist. Don't overwater these. Make sure there's plenty of drainage, but do keep them wet, and then before too much longer you'll see the asparagus starting to grow. And what you're actually doing, asparagus is a herb, so the important thing with any herb is you develop the roots, because that's the part that stays alive all the time. All of the top growth, the you know, the shoots and the spears and all the the bushy stuff, every year you cut that off at the ground and that goes onto the composting. That's not important. What is important is the roots. So it is important, as soon as these start to grow, what you do is you pop them on into a bigger pot and develop the roots. What you want to do is develop a nice root stock, and then when you put that into the ground it'll grow away really healthily. So anyway, that's asparagus, and that's what you can be doing this time of year at the beginning of April. Okay, I'll just give you a quick roundup in here. So there's not really anything on this side of the greenhouse at the moment. So we've got the broad beans, as you can see, they're doing really well. Really nice, healthy plants. The what have we got in here? These are the tomatoes. Nothing germinating quite yet. Here and here, these are there's nothing quite coming up yet. They're the money makers in the Alicante. These are the cauliflowers, just starting to come up now, as you can see. Those are the other tomatoes. Again, nothing coming through there quite yet. The sweet peas, nothing yet. This is the calabrese, or the green broccoli. As you can see, that's growing really nicely. And obviously these are the older broad beans at the back. I really do need to get them outside. What I'm going to do with those is just dig this patch here by the greenhouse. I'm going to dig all that over in the next few days, and I'm going to plant the beans into there. So that's all going to be like sort of broad beans, if you like. So they're going to go out very shortly. They're really struggling in these pots. Right, okay, just quickly going over into this greenhouse. Right, so these are the dahlias. Nothing as of yet. I'm obviously keeping them nicely watered. This is the Dom Pedro planter. No signs of life yet, however the culm's nice and hard, so all being well that should start to grow before too much longer. So the dahlias are there. The spring onions growing quite nicely there. I've got a bit of algae on the top, but what I'm going to do is separate them and put them outside before much longer. So they're the spring onions. Spinach, nothing yet. These are the Dom Pedro planter seeds that we put in last week, nothing yet. Strawberries are really coming on strong, as you can see. There's plenty of weed in there as well, but they're really starting to grow nice and healthy now. So there'll be some good sort of plants to put out in the strawberries out here to grow. One thing I will quickly note is this is the grapevine. As you can see, it's really starting to bud now. All of these buds coming all the way along the plant, particularly at the end here. If you can see there, these little buds there and here. So that's really starting to grow now. Oh, excuse me. Right, those are the kale that we potted up today. Those are the standard onions, sunflowers, asparagus, and then we've got the aqualegia and the hollyhocks there. Obviously there's nothing showing there yet. That's the second lot of broad beans. And then these are the alpine strawberries just starting to come through now. Some remainder of the kale there, and that's what the greenhouses look like at the moment. Unfortunately, the allotment really I can't work on at the minute. As you can see, it's still quite wet. We've had some more rain again today. It's nowhere near as wet as it was last week, but it's not really dry enough to dig, unfortunately. But that's what the allotment looks like at the moment. So, I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.